Yoshida is a depressed office worker who was rejected by his longtime crush and fell into a deep sadness. However, everything changes when he decides to help a homeless girl by letting her move in with him. Even though she now tries to compensate him with physical affection every night, everything begins the night he finally convinces his love interest to have dinner with him. After observing her charms throughout the encounter, he gathers the necessary courage to ask her out. But then she admits that she already has a boyfriend who is definitely more manly than a simple suitor. After realizing that she only used him to get free food, he goes to a bar to drink excessively while his friend Hashimoto tries to calm him down. As Yoshida refuses to be comforted, his companion decides to go home because his wife is waiting for him. Shortly after that, the protagonist also begins to walk towards his home, but on the way, he spots a young girl named Sayu Ogiwara sitting under a streetlight. He approaches immediately and asks her the reason why she is out so late. Then, Sayu explains that the train stations have already closed for the night. Yoshida asks her if she has a place to stay, and after saying no, she asks to spend the night at his apartment. When he rejects her, she offers to pay him with physical favors, but he affirms that he is not the type of man who looks for casual encounters with strangers. Despite that, he feels pity for her, so he takes her back to his home and collapses onto his bed as the effect of the beers finally catches up to him. When Sayu suddenly tries to show him her physical attributes, he takes a look and says he is not interested. She then asks if he wants something else, and he begins to mutter about miso soup before falling fast asleep. The next morning, Yoshida wakes up and almost suffers a heart attack when he sees the girl in the kitchen because he cannot remember anything from the previous night. She tells him what happened, but he remains frightened and asks if he did anything inappropriate to her. Sayu initially jokes, but after saying that he managed to behave like a gentleman, she serves the soup and explains everything that occurred in detail until he remembers seeing her under the lamp. Just when he tastes the food, she mentions that she knows about Arigoto's rejection because he did not stop muttering it while he slept. She then offers to make him feel better using her body, but when he refuses, she takes off her jacket and asks if her figure is too small for him. He notices that Goto's attributes were much larger, but after she explains about the sizes, he realizes that they are actually similar. In the next moment, she tries to seduce him again, so he asks why she is so persistent and says he could have used force if he were someone wicked. After putting her hands on his shoulder, Sayu asks why he tries so hard to be different when all the other men accepted her offer on the first night. At this moment, Yoshida feels that his masculine instinct is at its limit, but he calmly pushes the young girl away and says that he wants to know everything about her. She then hands him an identification card and says that she ran away from home 6 months ago. The protagonist tells her to return because her parents are probably very worried, but she says it is useless because they are better off without her presence. He is surprised that she survived alone for so long and asks how she managed it. Then she confesses that she basically stayed with men who accepted her affection as a form of payment. This makes Yoshida realize that she is losing herself. He suggests that she get a real job, but she says it still would not be enough to have her own place. After thinking about it, he agrees to let her stay as his housekeeper, but he threatens to send her back to the streets if she tries to seduce him again. The next day at work, Yoshida tells Hashimoto about Sayu, and his friend immediately tells him to take her back to the streetlight. He warns him that his life is already complicated enough without playing the protector of a young girl with that past. Despite this, the protagonist convinces himself that it is the right thing for her. Much later, he returns and sees that she is preparing something for dinner, but since he already bought food, they eat that instead. Afterward, he grabs the ashtray to smoke on the balcony, and when she notices that the other men never cared about her health when she lived with them, he tells her that she must establish better standards for her own person. The next day, she wakes up to begin the housework, and Yoshida notices that her back hurts from sleeping on the floor. After also seeing that she barely has enough clothes to cover herself, he takes her to the shopping mall to buy her clothes and a futon. She gets upset because she cannot pay him back, but he reminds her that all she has to do is be his cleaning lady. Days later at the office, Hashimoto tells him that all the women are gossiping about him because he looks much better than usual. He then promises to keep the secret safe because they could arrest him if anyone found out. After she mentions that it is probably why Goto rejected him, he begins to shave and decides to take his personal care seriously. Days later, he decides to buy her a skincare package, and upon leaving, he sees a phone store and asks her if she needs one. After she explains how she threw away her last phone to avoid contact with her family, he decides to buy her a new one, but she refuses, saying that he has already spent too much on her well-being. When they finally return home, he says that she can read some of his books if she ever gets bored, but then he notices a sudden change in her mood and asks what happened. She immediately begins to smile again and says that it is nothing, but he knows that she is hiding something and continues to ask about it. Eventually, she asks why he is so kind and says that no one has ever treated her the way he does. Then she sits next to him and promises to try to be a bit more open with him. After he tells her to take her time, she suddenly grabs his hand and asks if there really is no other way she can repay his kindness. He immediately pulls away and laughs before saying that she only has to perform the housework. The next afternoon at the office, Yoshida calls a colleague named Yuzuha Mishima to tell her about the errors he found in the code she is developing. Then he asks her to stay after work hours to fix it, and after hours of work, she finally fixes it and thanks him before asking why he is always looking out for her. After he explains that she does not have the capacity to handle projects alone, she asks if he is seeing someone because she also noticed he began to pay more attention to his appearance. When he tells her about Goto's rejection, she gets excited for some reason and asks him to go drinking with her, which he gladly accepts. Hours later, he returns home and apologizes to Seiyu for arriving late. Then she puts the dinner she cooked into the refrigerator and gives him another drink. The next midday, Yoshida takes Hashimoto to the phone store during their break to buy something for the girl. Upon learning of this, his friend warns him about becoming too attached to her, but he affirms that it is not possible because he only likes older women like his boss. After returning to the office, he begins to check his watch constantly to count how much time is left to go home to Seiyu, until Hashimoto tells him to stop acting so excited since he claims to have no feelings for her. Just then, Goto asks to see Yoshida after work, leaving him completely surprised. When they finally close for the day, his friend tells him to regain the dignity he lost the other night. However, when both arrive at a restaurant, he forgets how to speak since he never expected a second chance with his platonic love. While she finishes a glass of beer, he obsessively observes her figure until she notices it. He immediately begins to drink to avoid looking like a stalker, but then she asks if he likes the view, making him choke on his drink. Then he finally says that it is strange for her to ask him out after the initial rejection. She suggests that they ask each other questions to relax the atmosphere. Yoshida immediately asks why she invited him, but instead of answering, she asks if he is dating someone else. He responds that he remains single, but she tells him not to lie because she has noticed how close he is with Mishima and how he recently began to take care of himself. He explains that he has no feelings for his colleague and admits that he still loves only her, despite the fact that she has been his superior for the last 5 years. Then he repeats his question and says that she should not even worry since she rejected him. Then Goto admits that she simply did not like the idea of him already dating someone else after saying that he loved her. After apologizing for making him think it was a real date, she asks him to ask another question, and he asks for her bust size without hesitation. She responds calmly, but the answer leaves him in a state of shock until he returns home. Seiyu notices his mood and asks, but he pretends to be fine. However, after she insists, he decides to tell her about the encounter. Furthermore, he admits to being upset because he could not take Goto home again. Then Seiyu embraces him and tells him that she already prepared a bath to make him feel better. Afterward, he eats the soup she made for dinner, before handing her the new phone and seeing how she gets excited. Days later, she has a dream where she remembers one of the men she used to stay with, who basically used her as an object. After waking up, she wonders if Yoshida has some problem because he still has not tried anything with her despite having every opportunity. Later, he tells her to fix her hair before leaving for work, but this leaves her feeling even more confused than before because she has no idea if he is preparing her to be his partner or if he said it because he really cares about her. Hours later at the office, a colleague named Endo asks him if he is really going to give up his work trip, but Yoshida gets confused by the question. The colleague explains that he had never rejected it before and asks if it is because he has something special planned with some woman. Hearing this, Mishima also feels curious and asks who that mysterious person is, but he explains that he only has a package that will arrive around those dates, so the colleague decides to stop questioning him. Much later, Mishima asks him to go see a movie with her, and just when he is about to say no, she buys the tickets and tells him to meet her downstairs. On his way, he almost bumps into Goto and eventually sends a message to Seiyu informing her about the movie so that she does not wait for him like the last time. Hours later, the young girl begins to prepare dinner, but she also cannot stop thinking about him being on a date with another woman, so she decides to go out to look for him around the city. At almost the same time, he and Mishima leave the cinema, and he admits that he loves romantic movies because they promote the idea of finding a soulmate. As they continue talking about it, his colleague suddenly says that she has already found the man she is destined to be with. Then he tells her to do everything in her power to be with that person. Suddenly, she throws herself toward him, and Seiyu, who was watching them in secret, runs away thinking that she is his new partner. However, Yoshida pushes Mishima back, and she feigns a smile to hide how embarrassed she feels. After thanking him for agreeing to see the movie, she turns to leave but stops and asks what he would do if she were his soulmate. The protagonist then tells her to rest and also leaves. Minutes later, Yoshida arrives home and finds the apartment empty, so he runs out and begins to search desperately for the young girl. Meanwhile, she has just found a place to sit in a nearby park. After failing to convince herself that she has no feelings for him, she begins to cry inconsolably. Minutes later, Mishima sees her and decides to stay to make sure she is okay. After learning that the young girl ran away from home, the woman admits that she also did the same in her youth and asks her if she has a good relationship with her parents. She then admits that her parents are actually quite calm, but apparently that was not enough to prevent her from making wrong decisions in her life. When Seiyu admits that she might have feelings for someone, her interlocutor proceeds to give her a talk about love and convinces her to confess her feelings regardless of what the man might say. The talk manages to revive the young girl, but when she gets up to leave, Yoshida finds them in the park. He immediately takes her aside to ask for an explanation, but while she tries to tell what happened, Mishima asks if he is her father. After he says no, she notices a strange tension between them and guesses that it must be related to what they talked about, so she wishes them luck and leaves. Much later, both return to the apartment, but while he tries to hang up his clothes, she tries to speak to him with very few clothes on. The protagonist immediately tells her to put on proper clothes, but she refuses and says that first he has to listen to her. When she suddenly grabs him and asks if he really does not want to be intimate with her, he reminds her of his threat to throw her out onto the street. Despite this, she approaches even closer and touches him while repeating her question. After admitting that he has the same instinct as any other man when offered something like that, he firmly pushes her away. Sayu then says that she had actually tried to work for all the other men she stayed with. However, since there was a great risk in harboring a runaway like her, she ended up paying with her body to prevent them from throwing her out. That is why she cannot understand the fact that he is assuming all the risk and spending money on her without asking for physical favors in return. Suddenly, she approaches again and begs him to use her body because at least that way she will not feel like a burden. But Yoshida embraces her instead. Then he admits that she is an attractive girl, but says he is reserving his manhood for someone he truly loves. Minutes later, she finally agrees to get dressed. Then the protagonist explains that he does not see her just as someone who lives for free. He admits that life became much less depressing since she began to live with him, and he also learned to take care of himself thanks to her company. In the next moment, she begins to cry loudly, so he gives her a moment to vent before saying that he only wants her to continue helping him feel good about himself. Sayu then accepts and embraces him. A couple of nights later, she asks him if she can get a job, and when he says yes easily, she is surprised. He explains that it would be good for her to finally have an active life in addition to being his housekeeper. The next day, she begins working at a convenience store, and a girl named Asami Yuki acts as if she were very superior for having left school to work for minimum wage. After work hours, Asami learns that they live nearby and asks her if she can go to her house, but the young girl is not sure if Yoshida would approve. Curious, the new friend asks if he is her boyfriend, but she explains that he is like a brother to her. Despite this, Asami insists on staying and meeting him personally. So a couple of minutes later, Sayu sends Yoshida a message telling him that her friend is already in the apartment. While he tries to respond, Mishima tries to look and asks about the young girl. Hashimoto then asks why he told her about it, but this makes the woman realize that the friend knew about the situation before she did, so she gets angry with the protagonist for not saying anything about it. Meanwhile, Goto observes the whole scene from her table and feels curious. Much later, Yoshida finally returns home and meets Asami, who immediately begins to mock him for not being able to afford a better apartment. After introducing themselves, both invent a lie about being friends since they were small. Then, the young girl heads to the kitchen to prepare dinner, while he continues telling false stories about how they grew up together. Minutes later, she serves what should have been dinner for both, and Asami devours everything like a person without manners before complimenting her on her culinary skills. Much later, he gets tired of the guest's loud attitude and tells her to go home, but she asks him to accompany her outside because a woman should not walk alone at night. Sayu tries to join them, but Asami stops her and says that it is a man's job before going out with Yoshida, and telling him to stop lying because there is no way he is just a friend to the young girl. After taking a moment to consider his moves, he admits that both are strangers who decided to live together. Then he tells her that he actually wanted Sayu to be the one to tell her everything, but Asami says that he has already passed the trust test. After telling him not to worry about accompanying her to her home, he tells her to keep coming to see her friend whenever she wants. Asami tells him that the young girl is very good at hiding her feelings before leaving. The next afternoon, he tries to send her a message to let her know he finished working, but Goto suddenly asks him for another date. Minutes later, they arrive at the restaurant, but he gets distracted while trying to figure out what her friend meant about Sayu's hidden feelings. When his boss eventually regains his attention, he almost gets angry with her for making him waste his time, but the woman's charms take effect on him. She notices that he seems to be much more distracted than usual and asks if it is because he is finally dating someone else. Curious, he asks why she cares so much about who he might be dating and says he will not answer questions until she answers his. After moving too close to confuse his thoughts, she admits that she actually likes his presence. By then, Sayu has just finished preparing dinner and gets excited to see Yoshida, but then she sees his message saying that he is already on a date with Goto. Back at the restaurant, the woman has just admitted that she has never had a partner before, and after asking her to be sincere, he asks why she rejected him if she really feels something for him. She affirms that she could feel that something was happening with him and knew that it would not be the right time to begin a formal relationship. Once again, he doubts her words, but then she says she is willing to do anything to prove that she really likes him. When he suddenly asks if she would agree to be intimate with him, she freezes for a minute, so he admits that it was only a joke. In the next moment, she claims to be inexperienced in love, and he apologizes immediately for being insensitive before asking if she tells the truth. When she says yes and explains that she has never had a real romantic opportunity, he notices how embarrassed she feels and realizes that she is being honest. Then he tells her to ask him out when she feels it is the right time. She feels the slight anger in his voice and asks why he is upset. He reminds her that she has been playing with his emotions all this time. After apologizing, she promises to take the initiative next time, but says she also has to know whom he has been messaging recently. Minutes later, Sayu remembers a trauma from the past and loses her appetite. Then she receives a message from him saying that he will bring Goto home. Naturally, she feels sad and thinks that he finally succeeded with his boss, but then he sends another message explaining that the woman wants to see her. On the way, he tells her the same false story about his closeness with the young girl since childhood. And when they finally arrive, the woman introduces herself with some snacks. Minutes later, she learns the truth about their relationship and is surprised that he was bold enough to let the young girl stay with him. Then she asks if he has tried anything inappropriate, and she also admits to being surprised that he has never done anything. While they talk, both notice that the young girl acts strangely, but when they ask about it, she claims that it is nothing. The guest insists, and she assures that she is fine. But Yoshida feels an uncomfortable tension in the room, so he heads to the bathroom to give them some space. When Sayu begins to avoid eye contact, the woman asks if she has something to vent and offers to speak in private if that makes her feel better. Just then, the protagonist comes out, and she asks him to go for groceries, and he quickly understands that they need time alone. However, before leaving, he asks if she will be fine staying alone with his boss, and after saying there will be no problem, he goes out. The woman then asks her about everything that led her to stay with him, and after explaining it all, she asks why she left home originally. She refuses to answer, so the woman asks when she plans to leave the apartment. Meanwhile, the protagonist runs into Mishima, who claims that she went to see a movie alone. When he says that the cinema is very far from where they are standing, she claims that she only wanted to walk toward his neighborhood because she had nothing else to do. Then she asks about the young girl, and after explaining that he was sent on an errand, the colleague offers to walk with him to the store. In the apartment, Sayu has refused again to answer, so the woman explains that she cannot keep running away from reality. She also tells her that leaving home and selling her body does not change the fact that she is still very young and has to deal with that from which she flees to be able to truly grow. At that moment, she hesitates, thinking she went too far, but the young girl thanks her for being sincere. Sayu decides to confess about all the other men she was with, and after admitting that she felt accepted when they took her body as payment, she notes that Yoshida has been the only noble exception. The woman suddenly laughs and says that she always expected him to be a good man before expressing how happy she is that they found each other. However, after telling her that there is nothing wrong with accepting his kindness, she warns her to be careful because he could get into legal trouble for letting her stay there. She promises that she will eventually leave to face her past because she knows that he is risking himself. Upon hearing this, the woman embraces her and tells her to take the necessary time while the young girl begins to cry. Meanwhile, he has just finished the shopping with Mishima, but when he prepares to leave, she asks to spend the night at his house. When he says that he would only let his partner spend the night, she reminds him of the young girl, but he says that she is someone he is only helping. His colleague then mentions Goto, and when he tries to avoid the subject, she tells him to stop acting because she already knows that his boss is in his apartment. He asks immediately how she knew, and she admits that she began to follow them after they left the restaurant, apologizing for it. She says it is not fair that he always hides things from her about the other woman, and he remains paralyzed, not knowing how to respond to her emotional crisis. By then, the young girl has stopped crying, so the boss asks her if she has doubts, and she asks if she loves Yoshida. Goto hesitates a moment, but after hearing that he is obsessed with her, she admits to having feelings for him and says that she fell in love ever since he entered the office. Hearing this, the young girl decides to help her take things to the next level with the protagonist. Meanwhile, Mishima claims that she only asked those questions because she thought he had thrown the girl out to be alone. After he says that he would never do something like that, she asks if he really loves his boss, and he admits it without hesitating for a single second. His colleague asks why he lets his desire to help the young girl stand in the way of his feelings for the other woman. He is surprised and asks if she wants him to throw her onto the street, but she says she only wants to know what his real priorities are. After containing herself, she accuses him of not truly loving Goto because if he did, it would not be difficult for him to choose between both. In the next moment, she asks if he has feelings for the young girl, and after saying no, she approaches to tell him that he is too kind for his own good. Then she steps back and apologizes for exaggerating before leaving. Minutes later, he returns home and sees his boss putting makeup on the young girl. When they ask for his opinion, his mind goes blank, so they tell him to take a course on how to give compliments. Afterward, he accompanies the woman outside, and as they walk, she promises to call the police if he ever tries anything with the young girl since she noticed a certain mutual attraction earlier. He worries about her next move, but she tells him to relax because she trusts fully in his integrity. Days later while working, the young girl sees a familiar name in the registry and wonders from where she knows that person. However, when Kyuya Yaguchi enters, she recognizes him as one of the men who abused her when she was on the streets. He also recognizes her and tries to speak, but she ignores him and acts as if he were a stranger to avoid facing reality. Just when he asks why she changed her name, Asami enters and tells her to return to work. He tries to tell her who the young girl really is, but when she stops him, her friend realizes that something bad happened between them, so she locks herself in with her. After telling her that she does not have to talk about anything she does not want to, Asami promises to help if she ever needs anything. Hours later, the young girl goes out and sees sees Yaguchi, who apparently has been waiting for her. She tries to ignore him again, but he begins to mock her for her past and assumes that she is living with another man in exchange for physical favors every night. When he suddenly asks to see her new place, she refuses and says that Yoshida would not allow it. She tries to leave, but he threatens to tell everything to the store manager. Terrified, she asks if he only wants to see the place, and after he promises not to touch her, she sends a message to Yoshida to let him know. Minutes later, they arrive at the apartment, and after looking around, he asks if she is already having relations with the protagonist. She explains the deal they made, but the subject refuses to believe that anyone would let that opportunity pass for free. When he suddenly approaches and tries to overstep, she resists, but he continues to insist, so she gives him a slap across the face. This makes the man get angry and decide to use force. She immediately begins to cry and thinks that this will be the best option because things could get very bad for her protector. If he reveals who she really is, she decides to let him do what he wants but asks him to be quick. Fortunately, Yoshida enters at that moment and stops them before checking how she is. Then he throws out the intruder and demands to know what he was trying to do. The man proudly states his intentions before asking why he tries to save someone who does not want to be saved. The protagonist almost loses control, but after calming down, the subject asks if he really plans to let her stay for free. He responds that she can stay as long as she wants, and the other calls him stupid because he will end up broke or in jail for trying to be a hero. Yoshida says he is only trying to be a responsible adult by controlling his impulses. The man gets tired of the sermon and decides to leave, but the protagonist warns him to stay away from the young girl. After saying that his moralistic attitude is a nuisance, the subject agrees to step away and leaves. The protagonist then considers everything she has gone through and begins to cry bitterly. Moments later, he returns inside to check on her again, and she explains how scared she felt at that moment despite knowing that she had already gone through that many times before. After embracing her, he says that there is nothing wrong with feeling fear, but he insists that she has to start valuing herself more so that men like that do not approach. He also promises to protect her always, even if the whole world is against her. The next day at the store, Asami notices that her friend is distracted while arranging shelves, so she asks if something happened with that man. She tells her not to worry and feigns a smile, but her friend gets upset and tells her to stop hiding what she really feels. Then she walks straight toward the subject and demands to know what he did to her companion. He easily admits his intentions, but says he was rejected. However, she knows there is more to the story, so she asks for all the details. The man then admits that he tried to force her, and she responds with a slap that leaves him stunned. Then she says he has to apologize to her friend, but a customer appears, so she stays at the cash register. The subject takes the opportunity to apologize and admits that he really regrets what he did. When she asks why she has not told her friend the truth about her past, he reminds her that she promised to keep silent if she showed him where she lived. She is surprised that someone so unpleasant has some sort of code of honor. After saying she is not angry about what happened, she warns him to stay away because she will not be so weak the next time he tries something. When the man says that the protagonist is foolish for teaching her self-respect without trying anything else, she feels happy knowing that she finally found an upright man. Hours later, she returns home with her friend and receives a message from Yoshida. He explains that he will spend the night at the office to finish a job. Asami sees the message and responds that she will stay at his house to take care of her friend. After he thanks her, she says it will be no problem since her parents are not at home. However, they need to stop by her residence so she can pick up some things. Several minutes later, the young girl stands paralyzed with astonishment upon seeing that her friend lives in a huge mansion. After coming out, the owner explains how her millionaire parents barely have time for her. That is why she got the job at the store to keep herself busy. Much later, the young girl decides to tell the whole truth about her life and what led her to that point. And fortunately, her friend decides to remain by her side, so they spend the night talking about their respective experiences. At a certain point, Asami relates that they almost threw her out of the house for wanting to be a writer. After talking about a story from her father, she takes her friend's hand and tells her to stop running away from her mistakes because they made her into who she is now. Hearing this, she begins to cry loudly, so her friend contains her own tears to remind her that she will always be there to support her. The next day, he returns and says he left earlier than usual since he worked almost all night. After telling her not to worry about dinner, he apologizes for having been absent after the previous incident, but she tells him not to worry about that. Then she thanks him for helping her learn about self-respect and says she has begun to think about her future again. Hearing this gladdens the protagonist's heart, so he pats her head and promises to help her with anything she needs. Later at the store, Asami asks her to ask if he is okay with her visiting again, and after saying that he has no problems, she decides to go to work. In the next moment, her friend notices a parked car and says that the same vehicle has been appearing recently, but no one ever gets out to buy anything. Hours later, they return home, but the friend quickly gets fed up with a school problem she is trying to solve, so the young girl takes a look and says it is really easy to solve. Embarrassed, the other invents excuses to compensate for the fact that she finds it hard to understand. The young girl tries to explain it to her patiently, but her friend gets tired quickly and decides to take a break. When she mentions that the course is very important for her dream of being an author, the young girl remembers her promise to think about the future and becomes thoughtful. Her friend notices it and asks if she is okay, but she affirms that she was only thinking about what to prepare for dinner, so she offers to help her decide it. Meanwhile, he has just received a message at the office. He reads it while Mishima observes him and begins to feel jealous. To make matters worse, Goto appears and asks him for help with something while flirting openly with him. As soon as his boss returns to her table, his colleague runs toward him and asks if they can eat together. Much later, they arrive at a restaurant, and after seeing that her colleague has physical potential, the boss tells her to avoid junk food if she really wants to improve her figure. Then she asks if there is anything she wants to talk about, and Mishima immediately asks about her feelings toward the protagonist, with a serious face that almost makes the other choke on her salad. After the boss affirms that she only notices the change in his appearance and the fact that there seems to be a new girl nearby, the colleague asks if she knows about Sayu. The woman deduces that she knows everything and decides to tell her about the talk she had with the young girl in the apartment the other day. When Mishima asks if it bothers her how the young girl feels about him, the boss affirms that it does not really worry her. Surprised, the colleague tells her that it is better to fight for what she wants, which in this case is the man, but the other insists that it is useless because obviously one cannot control other people's emotions. Hearing this, her interlocutor gets upset and calls her a coward for not trying to conquer his heart by force. The woman tells her to relax and explains that they must wait to see if he feels anything for the young girl. However, this confuses the colleague, so she asks if she really loves him. The boss responds that her love for him is the exact reason why she does not act like a crazy, obsessive person. Hours later, he receives a message about dinner, but as he prepares to leave, his colleague asks to go to the cinema again. After noticing that he fights the impulse to reject her, she asks for his phone number and says it is fair since he gave it to the other women. He accepts but warns that he is very bad at responding to messages. Suddenly, she loses her temper and calls him selfish, affirming that he only does what he wants without caring about what others feel. Confused, he asks if she is projecting some insecurity onto him, so she takes a second to calm down before admitting that she has feelings for him. After returning the phone to him, she says it is fine if he does not want to write to her, but he promises to do so, feeling bad for her. Then she asks if they can still go to the cinema later, and after saying yes, she admits that she feels good when he does what she asks. Later that night, the young girl gets excited when telling him about her friend's exams and how they planned dinner, but he can barely hear her due to his own thoughts. She eventually notices it and asks if he is okay, but he tells her not to worry and suggests that she continue cooking with her friend since she seems to have enjoyed it. Days later, he notices that she has been working too much around the house, so he tries to help, but she takes him back to bed and reminds him that it is her labor. When he complains about being inactive and tries to help again, she pushes him and accidentally falls on top of him in a compromising position. Fortunately, he still sees her as someone to protect, so he gets up casually and heads to the bathroom to wash up while she imagines what could have happened. Minutes later, she finds his graduation album, and after looking at his old photos, she realizes that he never had much luck with women. When he finally comes out of the bathroom and sees her looking at a particular photo, he explains that that girl was his first girlfriend who broke up with him because he did not know how to treat older women back then. As he heads to the balcony, she stops him to say something, but her face makes his heart throb strongly, so she only tells him to stop smoking. He laughs, thinking she is joking, while she continues to look at him suspiciously. At the store the next day, Yaguchi changes shifts with Asami and sees the same car that always approaches the place. After it parks for the first time, the driver opens the door for a man named Issa Ogiwara, and the young girl immediately hides behind the counter. The subject quickly helps her sneak to the back, and while she tells her friend that the newcomer is her brother, Issa meets the employee at the counter and begins to ask about his sister. Minutes later, the employee joins the girls and says they no longer have to worry about the brother for now. After admitting that he hates wealthy subjects, he tells the young girl that her life as a runaway might end soon because her brother was serious about finding her. Minutes later, she begins to walk toward home and remains thoughtful, considering what was said, until she receives a message from Yoshida explaining that he has to work late again. Hours later, she goes to the store to buy groceries, but Mishima suddenly appears and says that she was at the cinema alone. Suddenly, the young girl hides behind her and begs her for help because her brother is still outside looking for her. The woman accepts without asking questions and waits until the brother leaves before taking her to a karaoke place to continue hiding. After thanking her for the help, she decides to write to the protagonist, but suddenly she freezes and worries that he might get upset and abandon his work. Her companion notices this and offers help, so she lets the woman write the message in her place. After verifying that everything is fine, she sends it to Yoshida, who has just finished with the project he was working on. Shortly after that, the woman decides to take a break from tormenting the young girl with her bad singing voice. When she asks her to choose a song, she refuses and says that karaoke is for people with a lot of free time. The woman notices the worried look in her eyes, so she sits next to her and asks if she is okay. After making sure that she did not commit any serious crime in his home, she asks her if she has considered returning to her family. She says yes, and when the other asks why she keeps buying food for the protagonist, she explains that she intends to keep fulfilling her part until she decides to leave. The woman then says that he would not mind if she took a break, before warning that her future actions will also affect him because they have become very close. Just when she reminds her that she does not have much time available, he enters and asks why they chose the last booth. After the woman affirms that they preferred that place, he helps with the bags so they can go home. As he begins to ask her what they will have for dinner, his colleague observes them and wishes she were in the young girl's place. But then he asks if she wants to accompany them for dinner. She says no, even though she really wants to. So he thanks her for helping the girl and tries to pay the bill. Just then, the young girl stops him and says that he is doing the same thing that always annoys her. He then offers to see a movie with her when he has the opportunity. After their colleague tells them to get home well, they leave, but she suddenly falls to the floor crying because he has never given her the same level of attention as the young girl. Meanwhile, Sayu asks him if he wants to spend a little time doing something for her. Just then, he sees a festival poster and offers to go with her. The next night, he is surprised by how good she looks in her traditional attire, so he looks away to maintain his composure. When they arrive at the festival site, she realizes that he has barely looked at her, so she asks for his opinion on her outfit. With no escape, he looks at her and admits that she looks incredible. In the next moment, she subtly asks if she looks better than Goto, but he barely hears the question and asks her to repeat it. However, she tells him not to worry because she already knows that his answer would break her heart. After seeing some locals with cotton candy, she tells him that she has never really tasted it, so he decides to buy her her first candy. Moments later, she takes a bite and decides to feed him, but he feels a bit uncomfortable about this. Despite that, he ends up accepting and prays he will not have to do it again. Meanwhile, she gets high hopes, thinking that she really has a chance with him. When a stranger accidentally bumps into her, he grabs her hand to prevent her from falling, but she quickly takes the opportunity to keep holding his hand, affirming that she might get lost if he lets go of her. Much later, both observe the fireworks together, and while she focuses on the lights, he immerses himself in his thoughts, wondering what his life would be like if he had not met her that night. After a couple of minutes of imagining scenarios, he realizes that she is no longer holding his hand and worries that she got lost in the crowd. Fortunately, she only wanted to throw something into the trash, so she takes his hand again and asks if he was worried. After he admits that he was, they continue watching the show, but then he suddenly asks if she will really leave him. Then he stops before saying something that might provoke more emotions between them, but she already feels them strongly. Afterward, he tries to withdraw with her, but she stops him and confesses that she gave false names to all the other men she was with. For some reason, she felt safe from the moment they met. That is why she told him her real name. Then she asks why he asked that question minutes before, but he pats her head to avoid saying something that could lead to an unexpected kiss. In the next moment, she asks if he would have taken her home to be intimate if she were as old as his boss. But before he can answer, she tells him not to bother, so they return home. The next morning, he hears someone at the door and gets up quickly to answer, expecting it to be a package delivery. However, as soon as he opens the door, Issa asks for his sister and says he wants to take her home. When he tells her to pack her things, she refuses and says she does not want to leave Yoshida. Her brother asks her if she has any idea how worried he has been during the last few months. He explains how he spent almost every day looking for her and getting scared that she might have found a wicked man. She tells him that her protector keeps her safe from all that, but the brother refuses to listen and affirms that the protagonist is definitely one of those subjects. This makes her very angry, so she defends the man, affirming that he would never take advantage of her. Eventually, he offers to answer any questions the brother has. Issa then asks if they have had intimate relations in his bed, and after both say no, he thanks the protagonist for respecting his sister. When he mentions that their mother has been very worried, she asks him to be sincere because their mother has never cared about her well-being. The brother explains that after her flight, the school teachers began to ask questions about her whereabouts, and their mother initially managed to keep them away, affirming that she had locked herself in her room. Eventually, the lies stopped working, and everyone began to believe that her mother held her prisoner inside the house. After hearing all this, he asks if that is the only reason why he came for her, but the brother admits that their mother is actually a selfish woman who does not care about her daughter. He explains that he actually wants to take her back for the sake of protecting the family reputation. So the protagonist asks to give him time to think about everything. Issa asks to speak with her for a couple of minutes and promises not to force her into the car, so he accepts. While the brother waits outside, the protagonist wonders how to assure him that everything will be fine. After embracing him, she follows her brother to the car to speak in private. Issa admits that the man seems to be a fairly calm subject since he protects her like a legal guardian. However, he tells her that she has to return because their mother has become much worse than she was before she decided to leave. After thinking for a moment, she admits that life as a runaway has been much more difficult than she imagined. She also omits the part where she gave her body for a place to sleep and only says that she needs more time to think about her future plans before returning home. Upon hearing this, her brother admits to feeling impressed that she is expressing her thoughts freely, so he promises to buy her at least another week by lying to their mother. Much later, Asami appears and gets sad upon learning that her friend will leave soon, so she comforts her and says she wants to tell them the complete truth about why she fled from home. She had always been on bad terms with her mother, and over the years, that bad relationship began to affect her school performance. Eventually, she became the lonely young girl with whom no one spoke, but all that changed when a girl named Yuko became her friend and gave her hope back. Shortly after their friendship began, a group of bullies began to bother her friend friend, and when she asked why they always bothered her, Yuko reminded her of the basketball player she had rejected. Apparently, all the girls in the school wanted to be with him, and because she rejected him, they decided to vent their anger against her friend. Confused, she asked why they did not approach her instead. Yuko explained that while she was very attractive, the other was always treated as someone inferior who only approached to gain some popularity. This made the young girl lose control of her emotions, and after telling her friend that she was the only person she cared about, Yuko assured her that they would be fine, probably thinking that the bullies would get tired and look for another victim. Several days later, she was on her way to the bathroom when she heard the aggressors talking about her friend and laughing. She immediately went in and found Yuko soaked with dirty water, so she decided to take the matter into her own hands. When her friend tried to stop her, she insisted that they had to defend themselves on their own, and after doing so, she was convinced that the bullying would finally stop. However, a few days after this, she went up to the roof for their usual lunch talk and found her friend standing on the edge. She tried to make her return inside, but the other began to say that she should never have tried to be her friend. She was surprised to hear this, but kept trying to convince her that jumping was a mistake. However, after telling her not to blame herself, Yuko jumped, and despite knowing what had already happened, she walked toward the edge and was horrified by what remained of her friend's body. Naturally, she stopped going to school, and reporters flooded her house every day hoping to get answers. When she finally decided to go out, her mother blamed her for acting as if she were the cause of everything they were going through, and this last incident made her decide it was time to go to the streets. When her mother suddenly asked if she had really caused her friend's end, her heart broke into pieces, but she gathered enough courage to call her mother a selfish loser who only cared about herself. Just when she was about to flee, her brother returned and she told him everything, and he actually agreed with her decision to step away from home. After embracing her, he gave her money for a hotel and told her to call whenever she wanted, but after weeks in painful isolation, she decided to experience actual homelessness. She threw away her phone to avoid communication with her brother and found her first client shortly after. So she continued selling her body for a bed until the protagonist found her. After hearing all this, he thanked her for trusting him with something so sensitive, and her friend also compliments her for surviving something so traumatic and embraces her. Much later, she falls asleep. So Asami joins him on the balcony and asks if he has plans for her. When he says that it is already too late for him to do anything, her friend tells him to find a way to help her because her family is obviously not healthy enough to help her heal from everything she has gone through. The next day at the office, Yoshida tells Hashimoto and Mishima about the brother, and after both agree that it would be better for her to return home, the friend notices that he seems worried about something. When he asks about it, the protagonist simply affirms that she has a bad relationship with her family, and his friend insists that returning is her best option since her brother is already on her side. Later that night, he returns home and runs into Isa, who asks for a couple of minutes to talk. The protagonist joins the brother in a nearby park. The other offers him a drink and begins by apologizing for the way he spoke the first time they met. They spend a couple of minutes talking about the night he found her, after which the brother decides to tell him why their mother seems to hate her so much. Their father built a very successful company many years ago, but around the time she was conceived, he found another young woman and fell in love with her. As a result, he told their mother to get rid of the girl, but she refused, thinking that the daughter would remind her father of the importance of family. Unfortunately, their father did not care at all and still chose to leave their mother for the other woman, so her mother began to treat her as if she were the curse responsible for dividing their family, further explaining that the young girl never had the opportunity to experience real love and adult guidance. The brother thanks him again for keeping her safe all this time. Then he asks him to keep taking care of her because she is going to need all the help possible to face their mother again. A little after this, he returns home and tells her about the talk he had with her brother, after saying that he was the only reason she endured her mother for so long. She says she plans to return, but only after taking the time to think about her life and what she plans to do with it. The next night, she prepares a recipe book with all the incredible dishes she made for him, so he does not have to drink alone out of habit again. A couple of days later, his friend tries to have lunch with him, but he refuses, saying he needs to focus on work. However, the cans of energy drinks tell his companion that something else is happening, so he tries to convince him, but he keeps refusing. After his friend leaves without him, his boss also notices that he is immersing himself in more work than usual. Hours later, she asks if he can follow her to a special place, and after accepting, she takes him to the stargazing site her friend showed her. As they sit together, she tells him about the conversation she had with her friend that night. After suddenly grabbing his hand, she admits that she would prefer to keep staying with him than return home with her brother. She also reveals that she had tried to leave his place without telling him at several points during the week, but she could never do it because she still cannot imagine life without him. In the next moment, he gets up to avoid the attraction of her charm and says that he wants to prove to her mother and everyone else that meeting him really changed her life for the better. Then he puts his hand near her heart and asks her to wish him luck. But at that moment, both lose control of their emotions. On her last day with him, his friend notices how sad he is and asks if he wants to take the rest of the day to be with her, but he affirms that he does not need it. Mishima then suggests that he follow her to her family home, and when he says that it would be a strange thing to do, she asks why he draws the line there after literally adopting her from the streets. hours. He then says he needs to finish work, but his friend offers to cover him. After thinking of a new excuse, he tells them that she needs to handle her problems alone or she will never overcome them. Much later, her friend calls to ask if he knows where the young girl is because she cannot find her anywhere. Upon hearing this, his friend tells him to go look for her, but he still hesitates, so his companion tells the boss that both are sick and need to leave. After she gives them permission, he still hesitates and tries to use work as an excuse, but his colleague offers to cover his position. Minutes later, his friend accelerates fully and ignores speed limits while getting angry with him because he has barely said a word despite being clearly worried. His friend tells him to stop acting as if he had stopped caring because his whole life in the last few months has revolved around her. After reminding him when he warned him not to get attached, he tells him to follow her to her home because he will not be able to rest without knowing if she is really safe. When he asks if they can handle the current project without him, his friend tells him to focus on her first because he will definitely be useless in the office if he remains worried. In the next moment, they receive calls from the other women and head immediately to the apartment. Upon seeing her, he asks immediately where she went, so the boss explains that she actually went to the office so they could walk together since it is her last day. She apologizes for causing everyone to worry, but everyone is happy that she is okay. Hours later, he tries to rest, but she asks to share the bed with him suddenly. Surprisingly, he accepts but promises to push her away if she tries anything. She accepts and joins him, but after a few minutes, he realizes that she is nervous about leaving and offers to accompany her to her destination. She is surprised and refuses to believe it, but after he promises to help with her mother too, she embraces him gratefully. The next morning, her friend gives her a very tight goodbye hug. Then she tells him to make sure he keeps his promise to protect her, or there will be consequences when he returns. Much later, she falls asleep on the plane, so the brother takes the opportunity to ask why he decided to accompany them. He admits that he would have remained worried if he let her return alone, especially after everything he heard about her mother. Hearing this, the brother tells him that their mother will definitely not believe that he allowed an attractive young girl to live with him for months without anything happening. Just then, she wakes up and immediately checks where he is, so the brother offers to help him if he changes his mind about going to their house. After laughing at the attempted joke, she begins to check the plane seats as if she had never seen them. He learns that it is her first time flying, so he asks if they never went on a family trip. She says her parents were never ones to travel, so both spend the rest of the flight observing the views. Hours later, they land, and the brother calls a car to take them. But suddenly he remembers an important task at the company and says they will go home afterward. Minutes later, he notices that his sister is nervous again, so he suggests they spend some time touring the city. She gets excited, and after arriving at a cafeteria with him, she affirms that it is also her first time in one. He says the same, and while he looks for what to order, she looks out the window and sees two students who remind her of her relationship with Yuko. He notices it and tries to distract her with light talk, but she tells him that her mother always kept her locked up and claimed that was how everyone lived at her age. It was only after fleeing that she learned that going out with friends was something normal. After admitting that she feels happy to visit her first cafeteria with him, he asks if she is afraid to return. She says yes, but also affirms that she will overcome it easily as long as he is there to help her. Much later, the brother appears to take her, but she wants to visit one more place before seeing her mother. At nightfall, they end up at her school, and after realizing what she plans to do, the brother tries to stop her, but she insists that it is necessary. Then she asks him to follow her, but after entering through the fence, he remembers his maturity and says it is wrong to enter without permission. She asks where his sense of righteousness was when he took her in, so he stops trying to dissuade her. Minutes after touring the building, they arrive at some stairs and he realizes that they lead to the roof from where her friend jumped. After taking his hand to gain strength, she goes up, but they find the door locked, so she decides to enter through a window. As soon as she enters the roof, her anxiety increases, so she asks for support, and he enters quickly to take care of her. After calming her, she sees the bench they used for lunch and hesitates if she is ready to face what happened. However, thanks to the man's support, she walks toward the bench, only to fall suddenly after the last step. Worried, he tries to help her, but she stops him and affirms she is fine before running toward the fence and blaming herself for what happened to her friend. He runs immediately and sees that she is hurting herself with the fence, so he pulls her away and says that nothing was her fault. She refuses to believe it, so he reminds her that nothing would have happened if the bullies had left her alone. She steps back and says that she is the reason why her friend was the target, seeing that his words are not working. He says that her friend chose to be by her side because they really loved each other, while she continues to cry. She admits that she felt betrayed by her friend's action. After saying that feeling angry makes her a bad friend, he assures her that there is nothing wrong with being upset with someone who decided to leave her alone in a difficult world. He further explains that she needs to forgive herself and let go of the guilt, because wanting a friendship does not make her a bad person. While he embraces her, she finally decides to release all the pain and falls into his arms. Minutes later, the brother begins to wonder if they plan to spend the whole night there. By then, she has stopped crying, and after a few minutes talking, she gets up and looks one last time at the site of the event. Upon leaving, he asks if she finally overcame it, but she says she will use the pain to keep the memory alive in her heart forever. Moments later, they meet the brother, and she says she is finally ready to go home, so they they get into the car. However, when they arrive at the residence, she hesitates, so they give her a minute to calm down. Eventually, she gathers the courage to follow them inside. The brother goes to look for the mother. In the next moment, the woman walks straight toward her daughter and gives her a hard slap. Then, she demands to know where she has been all this time and affirms that her actions have brought much shame to the family. The brother stops her and introduces the protagonist as the man who kept her safe. However, the mother does not want to hear anything else and enters the house again. Minutes later, they sit at the table to talk, and after a long period of silence, the mother asks what she wanted to achieve by running away from home. She says her mother has never tried to understand what she is going through, and the woman says it is because her daughter never wants to tell her anything. When the young girl asks if she remembers blaming her for what happened to her friend, the mother affirms that she has already forgotten all that, and she says that this is the exact reason why she never talks to her. Upset, the mother asks if she ran away to get attention, and she responds that she did it to get away from her presence. While crying inconsolably despite seeing her daughter in that state, the mother insists that she was foolish to run away and stay with a stranger. Then she asks why she brought the man with her. So the young girl explains that he is the closest thing to a mentally stable adult in her life. When the mother tells him not to get involved in their affairs, the brother tries to stop her disrespect, but she refuses to listen and asks if the man had relations with her. The brother tries to stop her again and almost receives a blow. So the protagonist steps in and says he was fully aware of the risks when he let her live with him. The mother then asks the brother why he allowed that man to follow them, and she responds by hitting the table and demanding her mother stop always attacking her friends. After saying that the protagonist is much more of an adult than she is, the mother also loses her temper and blames her for complicating her life and that of her son. In the next moment, she says she regrets giving her life, and while the young girl cries again, he considers confronting the woman with violence, but he controls his anger and finishes his drink before telling her to calm down. After remaining silent for a few minutes, he tells the mother that the young girl never chose who would give her life. Then he offers to assume full custody if she really hates her as much as she claims. But after thinking about it another minute, he admits that it would be wrong on his part to assume all the responsibility. After telling her that she is the one who must take care of her daughter, he kneels to beg her, and the brother also joins him. While the young girl tries to stop them, the mother gets confused by this and suddenly begins to cry before ordering them both to leave. The brother asks for some space, so both head to the porch. Just then, she sees tears in his eyes, so she asks if he is okay, and he admits that he never expected the mother to be so cruel. When he asks how she is, considering what was said inside, she reminds him when she said that his presence would help her get through it. After letting her tears flow too, she thanks him for everything and says she felt relieved when he begged for her sake. He says he probably spoke too much, which is why they were thrown out, but she tells him not to worry and takes his hand. Minutes later, the brother comes out and says that the mother agreed to stop attacking her as long as she promises to stay at home at least until her graduation. She hesitates because her mother never keeps her word, but her brother assures her that this time will be different because no one had affected her the way the protagonist did. Hearing this, he apologizes if he went too far, but the brother tells him not to worry because not even he could get such a reaction from their mother. The brother asks him to spend the night there, and after accepting, he asks to speak with the woman again. His brother says there should be no problem since she seems to have calmed down. So he goes in and begins by apologizing for his way of speaking. She affirms that she has already overcome it, but asks if he really did nothing with her daughter. After assuring her that nothing happened, he asks her to speak with the young girl too, and she accepts. Then she tells him to focus on returning to his home so that she can focus on her family. After their talk, he goes out and sees that the young girl also wants to say a few words to her mother, so he wishes her luck. The moment she enters, the mother prepares for another verbal assault, but her daughter kneels and apologizes for all the pain caused by running away. This makes the mother cry again, but she contains herself and refuses to apologize because everyone has acted as if she were to blame. After admitting that speaking with the man helped her learn about herself, the young girl also gets emotional. The mother tells her to focus on improving her grades since she lost an entire school year. Moments later, he sees the young girl at the door smiling for the first time since they landed. Afterward, he tries to get some sleep, but she sneaks in and climbs onto the bed. He moves to give her space, but she approaches his chest and says it is a goodbye gift so he does not forget her tomorrow. After saying that she likes how things turned out with her mother, she asks if she can continue living with him, but he refuses and tells her to focus on her family. When he turns to look at her, she gives him one last chance to be together intimately and says it will be the perfect way to make their last night memorable. However, he rejects her proposal and says he does not need that to remember her. Despite this, she does not give up and offers other forms of physical affection. So he decides to spend the night watching her to make sure nothing inappropriate happens. The next day at the airport, the brother asks for a few minutes alone with him, and after she leaves, he hands him money to compensate for the travel expenses. After he refuses to accept it and suggests that he buy new clothes for her, the brother asks if he is in love. He decides to explain his preference for older women so that he understands that he never thought of her in a romantic way. After saying that the young girl could have ended up in a tragic situation, the brother thanks him for everything again. Then he wishes him luck in his life in the city and tells him not to make her wait too long before heading to the car. Moments later, later, he catches up with the young girl, and she asks what he was talking about with her brother, but he is curious as to why she is still in uniform. After saying it is a secret, she asks if they can keep talking, but he hears the boarding announcement and realizes that he must leave. Turning around, she explains that the uniform reminds her of the night he found her and saved her from the streets. After he admits that he loved the time they spent together, she suddenly confesses her love for him. He is surprised and waits for her to say it is a joke, but she is very serious, so he finally admits that he finds her attractive. However, since she is not yet an adult, she asks if he will wait a couple of years for her and consider giving her a chance. He pats her head and says it would be useless because he would be much older by then, so she should focus on herself. However, she takes his hand and promises to go look for him even if he decides not to wait for her. When she begins to cry again, he responds by laughing to ease the pain of separation. Minutes later, he boards the plane. So she reunites with her brother and affirms that she will definitely see him again in the future. Much later, he returns to his apartment and finds a note that she left on a garment so that he never forgets her scent. Then he looks at her recipe book and decides to see if he can prepare a decent meal without help. Afterward, the bad taste of his soup makes him shed a tear just before falling exhausted and realizing that he misses her even more. 2 years later at the office, Mishima hands him a new project that she has just completed for him to review. The friend congratulates her for finally being able to lead an entire project on her own. After he says that it was thanks to his guidance, she accepts calmly and even thanks him for all the help. Goto suggests having a celebration dinner after work, but he says he will not be able to attend. After promising to take him to the next one, the boss decides to go out only with the other 2 colleagues. Mishima reminds him that he still owes her a date, while the friend is curious about all the time he spends with Asami. Hours later, he goes out and sends a message to the friend asking where she is. She tells him to go to the usual place, but at that moment he sees the young girl under the streetlight and feels his heart stop for a second. After controlling his emotions, he wipes away his tears and walks toward her before telling her to return to her house. However, she says she cannot return and asks if she can stay in his apartment again. Since she is now an adult and can take things to the next level, the question remains whether he will accept her love or keep waiting for his boss to take the initiative. One can comment to know more, and not forget to follow the content to see more similar stories. Thank you.